Alright, video number 2 for data cleaning. We're going to keep going on the Tour de France data set, and this time we're going to be looking at how to rename columns, how to separate columns into different columns. We're going to write a function that uses regular expressions. This is a pretty advanced topic. We're going to do a fairly quick job at that, and then we're going to talk briefly about the Sapply, or if you mispronounce it or just look at it quickly, it looks like Sapply. Okay, so here we go. We've already run all the stuff from video 1. So we have the Tour de France data it's been a little bit cleaned. We removed the world wars, we've taken some columns out. Things are looking good so far. Next, the time points column doesn't really make sense as a name because we removed all the points. So what we're going to do, again, so I don't overwrite anything that's old, I'm going to give it a new data frame name. I'm going to take the old data frame, pipe it into what's called the rename command, because we're doing a rename. That should seem pretty obvious. Time points is no longer relevant, so I'm just going to say time equals time dot points. Okay, if I run that, now 2 or 4, notice it says time. That's a pretty easy one. This is pretty cumbersome if you've got lots of them to name. The unfortunate reality is you have to just do a comma-separated list and do lots and lots and lots of these if you've got lots of columns to rename. Or figure out a way to do it programmatically. And that's perfectly fine also. This one was relatively easy. Okay, now we've got some weird stuff in this data set. So if I look at 2 or 4, the time has an H, an apostrophe for the minutes, and a quote for the seconds. The distance has kilometers and miles. What I want to do is I actually want to separate out, let's just say the distance in miles and kilometers. We're also going to separate out the times. So it's the separate command. And the command works like I've listed here. You tell it what column, should be singular, column, and then you say into, and then you give it the names of all the new columns. So let's see. 2 or 5 is going to be my new data frame. Gets 2 or 4, which is all of the most recent stuff. I'm going to separate the distance column, and I'm going to say into equals, and then I'm just going to give it a list of names. Now the distance column has kilometers and miles, so what I'm going to do is say, let's give it a concatenated list. We'll say distance, what was it first? Kilometers was first, so I'll say km, and then distance mi. And then you have to tell it what the separator is. So if I look at this, the separator is literally a space in between the kilometers and the miles. Now we'll take care of the parenthesis, the km, the mi, all that stuff later. The separator is really a space. So I'm going to put quote and space. Okay, now if I run that, I should now be able to look at 2 or 5, and I've got distance km and distance mi. Thankfully it ignored that space. I had to be a little bit careful here. I only told it that there was 2 columns, and so it found the space to kind of split things equally. So that was pretty smart of it. That's good. I should also be able to do the same thing for time, so maybe let's write a separate command for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pipe the result from that into another separate command. This is where pipes become really handy, is that I can take a data frame, send it into one command, send that result into the next command, send that result into the next command, instead of embedding these functions inside of each other. So the time I want to do into, let's see here, I'm going to do hours, quotes, hours, minutes, seconds. And my separator, I'm going to say is a space also. Okay? So since I've done a couple of these, I'm going to highlight everything from the beginning right up to there. Ooh, it had a couple of pieces that it didn't like. Let's see what it did. So this is 2 or 5. I got hours. Uh-oh. Something weird happened here. Oh, I missed my quote. There it is. Okay. Yeah, it happens. You screw up, you read the warning messages, you try it again. So let's run it all again. 2 or 5. Look at this. Distance in kilometers, distance in miles. Hours, minutes, seconds. And it just squeezed everything in right next to the others, which is kind of fantastic. Right? That's exactly what you want to happen. So we've done some pretty good work here. Except this now has an H in it. That guy has an apostrophe. That guy has an apostrophe. This has a KM, a comma. This is a mess. Okay, so what we're going to do, and this is potentially pretty complicated on some data sets. I'm going to build a function called strip non-numeric, because everything in these guys are going to be numeric. This guy is a function. You won't need to do this on every data cleaning problem. That's okay. It takes something in. Functions have curly brackets. I think you've probably seen functions in my other videos. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the gsub command. Really what that does is it looks for patterns in text and says, I want to take a pattern and replace it. Okay. The pattern that we're looking for is non-numeric. This is a big can of worms right here. I'm going to talk about these things called regular expressions. This is a 50 video sequence on how to use regular expressions in about 1 minute. You're going to send a key collection of symbols to this gsub command that says do something with my text. If you learn one regular expression for this class, it's this one. Look for things that are not 0 through 9. The caret is the not, the bracket's making a set in regular expressions. Replace those by nothing. So I have quotes with not even a space in between. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the x that goes into the function. It's going to look through that and say, find all the things that are not 0 through 9 and replace them by nothing. Then, you'll notice in the data frame that all of these dudes were characters. So I'm going to typecast them. So this function, if I run it, this function should take something like the hours. So let's try it. I'm going to take strip. I'm down here in the command line now because I just want to try it once. See, I'm on 2 or 5. That's my most recent. I'll say distance, kilometers, and I'll say the very first one. Okay, and it returned just a number to me. That's lovely. It's exactly what I want to do. Right? So basically it took this, let's see, that 2,428 space km and just returned the number 2,428. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want to do. Again, regular expressions are complicated. This one is really handy. If I took off the not, it would keep all of the things that were it would actually remove all of the things that were numeric. Sorry. So let me do that just to show you what it'll do, because it's going to be exactly the wrong thing. Yeah, NA, it just says, I don't know what the heck you're doing. Okay, throw that back in there. Not. Let's rerun that guy. I'm going to make sure he works. He does. Okay, and now we're going to use the sapply. So that applies a function to a list or a collection of lists and returns vectors back out for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 2 or 5. I am actually going to overwrite it this time. Of the columns, let's say distance km, distance mi, hours. This is a little bit of a long list. I apologize. It's not the most riveting video here. Okay, so what I've done, and I've said, I've got all the guys that have potentially non-numeric stuff in them. Copy. That gets sapply. Take those same things and apply the split non-numeric function. Oh, strip, not split. Okay, so let's parse this line of code here because it's kind of complicated. I'm taking my 2 or 5 data. I'm taking the columns that I'm interested in clobbering all of that stuff out of there. I'm going to use the sapply function. So I'm going to send all those columns into the sapply function, and I'm telling it apply that function to those columns and return functions. Run. It ran error-free, which is lovely. Look at that. All of the garbage is gone. Everything is numeric. The heavens are singing. This is beautiful. And that's where I'm going to stop on this video. I just did some complicated stuff, so please just go back and look at it and watch this one again.